What's up, YouTube? Pretty orange, like almost a rust red piece of Coastal Plains chert. This is really another D+ grade of material. I've got some cracks in it, a lot of fossils. Would be nice if we can get something out of it though. So let's give her the old college try. I'm gonna start by knocking some of these problems off. Ooh, there's a crack in here somewhere. Oh, big one. I think I found it. Right there. Now the question is, how far in does it go? Can we get it out and maintain some space or size? I meant. All I'm doing now is just trimming off these super thin areas that are going to have to come off anyways. I can't start running big, nice, pretty flakes into this thing until we get rid of all these super thin edges. That crack runs in a good amount. Hoping we can take it out though. And the way I try to get around these is I just do really, really small, precise flaking around it to try and single it out. Get whatever part is in fact cracked, gone. Ooh. Dang. So our original crack busted open. Now why do I have a triangular piece? Great question. Well, there's a sea biscuit fossil on the opposite side of that crack, which is probably where the crack started at. Like I said, Coastal Plains chert, man, it's always full of problems. But okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so here's that whole sea biscuit right there. An entire sea biscuit fossil preserved in the stone. Along with the shell right here. You know, this is some really, really fossiliferous type of chert. Here's the opposite side. You can see that shell pretty good right here. But that's not the only supposed crack in this stone. I'm just hoping the other bits of it will stay intact, at least enough to do something with. Yeah, this is nasty. This chert sucks. Alas, it was in the heat treated pile. It must be used. This is definitely not selling grade material. This is more material I like to heat treat, see what it turns out into, and then if I can get a real unique looking point off of some material like this, and I could sell the point. I wouldn't sell you this material though. That's just not good. It's pretty though. It's got some pretty colors in it. Look at all the fossils in there. Well, hello, my love. All right. Reduce the size down quite a bit. We got some good chunkiness, which isn't per se the best, but we do have some good platforms, so that's a real good bonus. Now we do have what appears to be another seam here in the stone, and I don't know how far in that goes, and I hope it just stops right here, but there ain't but one way to find out about that. That held together. Which that seam might just be healed, but I probably wouldn't bet on that on this stone. This particular rock is just it came out of a big boulder from Bainbridge, Georgia. Not Flint River material, just regular coastal plains chert. Hit here and go across that seam. That actually ran pretty good. For how crusty this is, it did take the heat treatment pretty well. I don't have any extra seams that have opened up due to the heat treatment. I think the original seam was just an original seam from the fossil. And I think this seam right here is going to hold up. Cool. Yeah, this is going to be a pretty decent little biface, I think. Now, unless I get to thinning and I run into a really random fossil on the inside of it, I think we should get something pretty interesting. This is going to be a really pretty piece. It's got some great color on it, like a rust color and a little bit of pink on the tip. But we definitely got our fossils to fight through. So let's start with some large percussion, try to get some large flat flakes going. Ooh, there's another seam. We've uncovered another one right here. Of course, the thinner we get, the weaker the stone will be, so we shall see if it holds up. But I think this one's another healed seam as well. That's a good strong hit. Goodbye to that sand dollar fossil right here. That's really pretty piece. Really pretty material. Gosh, I hope I can get something good off of this. You know, I kind of like the bad varieties of coastal plains chert. I don't know if it's because deep down I don't know, I like to suffer. I don't know. But I've made some seriously beautiful, unique points that when you look at it and you see the style and the material, you just automatically think Gulf Coast. Doesn't matter. And I like that. You know, that's my region. And even this entire stone, it's not really even chert. It's more just like a fossil conglomerate. Yeah, I'm hoping that seam stays together. Kind of expose a bit more of it now. It looks to be, but you never know. This consistency of chert would be considered dry. Really porous, low grade. So here we've ran into a little conglomeration of fossils right behind us, a snail shell or clam shell or something. Little seam right there that it's just decided to stop on. I had a lady at a show one day. I had this chert that I'm talking about. It was probably the worst grade material I've ever been able to get a point off of. But it was so unique in the fact that it was like all the rice grain clamshell fossils that were in it were extremely visible, barely silicified together. And it really made for a super unique pattern. It was large rice grain, the entire thing. And I made like a 4-inch long button base chert stem point with full serrations. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. And I had a lady buy it for 80 bucks just because of how unique it was. And ever since then, I've really said, you know what? I'm going to start hating on all my rough material points because you really do get unique stuff off of it. Alright, now we've bifaced her out pretty good. We're going to get hit here, try to take this mass off. There's some of it. Take some off the tip. Dang it, I should have abraded that one. Yeah, that was my fault. Alright. That was a good big strike. Downsize. Get a little more precise. That was a long flake, ran all the way across here. Yeah, this chert is really dry. When nappers say it's dry, it usually means it's very porous, very chalky, and typically low grade. Quite low grade. Which is exactly what this stone is. But I mean, all hate aside, I mean, the dang thing is holding together. So I give it that much. I mean, unless I just run into an unforeseen fossil, it's trying. There we go. Bit a bit too much off on that one. Stem point it is. Which is just how bad the material is. I was kind of thinking it was going to be a stemmer anyways. There we go. That took that problem off. Good support. Goes a mile. Ouch. A lot of fossils in this. A lot of shells. A lot of shells. Alright. Reducing down a good bit here. Material is difficult to stay consistent. I could definitely do some more work with the direct percussion, but let's go ahead and do some work with this large indirect first. Because if I have any hope of keeping this decently intact, I want to go a little gentler on it, I think. This particular piece of flint probably could take a little more heat, but I wouldn't say very much more. It's got enough seams in it as it is. No need to risk it. And I mean, the material itself just isn't very consistent. It's got a lot of little voids in it, but it flakes pretty good. I mean, I'll give it that much. So I probably wouldn't recommend more than what I had on it. I only gave it about 450 to 500. Yeah, cooked it in a turkey roaster. Yep. Yeah, now we're getting there. That was a really good hit. Shoot, I might make this an abbey point. If I can keep the width on it somehow on the base, I'll definitely make this into an abbey point. Real fossily abbey. Ooh, look at that shell. Look at that shell. It'd be nice to keep that in the stone. Now, why didn't that go? Why did that stall out? That worries me. Fun fact for you, the very first point I ever found was an abbey point. And on a later note, the very best point that I ever found so far was an abbey point. Ooh, yeah. Not bad. Abbey Point is in the Pickwick complex. They're kind of related to the Elora, Pickwick, Kirk, Lake Kirk type points. Stemmed, found across the deep south in the Gulf Coast region primarily. Very rarely, you've seen them a little further north, and my theory is that those were just trade points. They weren't set up north. Pretty common to find though, and they're just very very wide, very flared out, dramatically flared out, pretty points. Primarily used and probably exclusively used as knife blades. Heavy resharpening on them with a 4-way bevel is very common. I like the way this is looking. I'm not doing too much work to one of the sides because one of the sides is primarily flat. It's got a little work to go on this pass, but it's not going to require that much afterwards. Now, if you find the real abbey point, you're going to notice that they're not the thinnest point. They're usually very well flaked, very well made, has a lot of good craftsmanship on it. But not the thinnest point out there. They were more just big, thick utility knives that were constantly resharpened to the point where they were just nothing. hence the large four-way bevel that you'll notice on their blade edges. There's a problem here I need to get off, but it's on a bad spot, bad chalky spot. And that seemed to do it. Still fairly thick, but I can work with that. Yeah, almost any time I've ever found Abbey points, I've also found Elora points nearby, Pickwick points. They're in that same complex of point styles. And the good news is, if you're just trying to replicate one, you definitely do not have to make them paper thin, because they are not a very thin point. They're fairly thick, which might, in this case, help me out with this particular material, with it being so rough. Let me see how much battery I have. Don't get low, I'm at 5%. Some of the earlier Abbeys didn't quite have the little button base, but as the Abbey point became more common and whatnot, they swapped over to a more button type base. For what reason, I couldn't tell you, and that's just based off of everything that I've read. There is a sub-variant, there's a couple sub-variants of the Abbey, very subtle though, the button base and the straight base, but there's also one that's debatably its sister style point, and that's the Cotton Bridge point, which is pretty much just a big daggum diamond on a stem. I do have a couple of those in my collection as well, and there's a distinct difference, but you look at it, you can tell it. I mean, it's an Abbey point. It's just a different style of Abbey. Alright, I'm going to go to pressure flaking here. This is what we got so far. She's thick, but to properly replicate an Abbey point, I do want to keep a little bit of thickness on it, so that way I can get a proper four-way bevel on the blade edge. It's also a reason I stopped making my points and selling them, because I try to replicate the point style. Like, unless I'm just trying to make an art piece, I try to replicate the point styles based off how they are found in the field. You know, if they're thick, I give them a little bit of meat, leave it on there. I could definitely take it away. That ain't a problem. But why would you replicate a point famous for its thick, sturdy body and make it paper thin? That just doesn't make sense to me. And it's kind of like with paleo points too. I don't heat treat my paleo points. I make them out of raw chert. You know, because paleo points, about 99% of them are made out of raw material. So why would I sit there and try to cheat and make a Clovis out of some heat-treated material? Which I guess ain't nothing wrong with that, but for me personally, I like to try and replicate. And I stopped selling them because I had some people, and I'm not going to mention names, but I had a guy about 6 or 7 years ago that I used to sell my points to, and he used to buy a lot of them. And at that point, I was struggling on cash. I just had my first baby, you know, and things were tough, so I gladly accepted it. But my buddy Jake would point out, he'd be like, "Hey man, ain't you just make this 1 point out of this material?" Yeah, why? Well, it's up on eBay selling as authentic with a certificate of authenticity for $1,000. I just sold that thing for like 20 bucks to the guy. And I'm like, seriously, dude? Like, you're literally gonna get my stuff that I spent all my time and effort making, sell it off as authentic, and rip me off, and rip off your customer who thinks they're buying some kind of G10, G-Whiz point, and he was just making his own little quick printout certificate of authenticity. And that's messed up. So, second I found out about that, I blocked him. I never answered his text messages. And since then, I don't really sell my points off unless it's somebody I know, because I don't want that going around. I don't like that. I use my artwork to scam people and lie. But that's the artifact community for you. You gotta watch yourself. There's some snakes out there in the grass, and I don't much play around with snakes. So I'd rather just make them and not sell them. I haven't sold a point in a long time, actually. Ooh. Bam. Alright. So I think I'm going to end this video here. I'm almost out of battery anyways. And in the next video, we're going to continue to shape this abbey point and make a real deal replication of an abbey point out of some nasty grade coastal plains chert. This is going to be as authentic looking as it can get. So, here's our finished product so far. We're working on our 4-way bevel. It's not thin, but we don't have any problems on it. We got some fossils displaying, which is a good representation of hard coastal plains chert. And we'll finish this beauty on the next one. Thanks.